Welcome back, legends. I hope you're all fantastic. It is time for another installment of Friday Q&A. As always, if you have questions you would like answered on next week's Q&A, please put them in the comments section below. If you want to support the channel or join the Discord server or get some free IRs or listen to the music that I make, there are links to all that fun stuff in the video description. As always, thank you to everybody who asked a question this week. We're going to get right into it. Let's go. On my recent live stream, it was pointed out that for the intro and for the kind of little middle break section in the Ragdoll song Rust, there is like a lo-fi filtered style effect happening. What is that effect? What's the Rust effect? It is just a filter block that is placed after the amp and cab on the FM9 that is being swept by an ADSR. So I trigger that when I start playing, and then basically you just get this kind of like bandpass filter sweep up. And if you've watched my most recent FM9 video, I think the one that had some preset ideas in there, I showcase that particular filter setting there. So you can go and check out that video and replicate the Rust effect for yourself and use it in your own songs. What do I think about offset guitars, and have I ever played a guitar with a 24-inch scale? I have played a Duosonic a little bit, which I do not mind. In general, the kind of Jag and Mustang thing, it's not really for me. I think if I was going to go offset, I would go all in and get a Jazzmaster, or maybe get one of those Jazzmasters that has a Les Paul style bridge and, you know, put some active EMGs or some Fishman Fluence pickups in it and have a baritone scale length or something like that. Because I think it's a pretty cool guitar in its own right. It does have a sound. I think the design is really, really cool. Like, to me, a Jazzmaster kind of looks like if you took a Strat and a P-bass and just kind of got funky with them. So I like that overall shape. The kind of sounds, some of my favorite albums use those guitars, but again, that's kind of like a missing link in my entire guitar collection, is one of those kind of offset style things. So yeah, it would be kind of cool to have something like that, and like I said, just make it like a real metal Jazzmaster. But at the same time, I do like that sound that they do, that I think everybody who's familiar with the whole offset thing understands very, very well. Embarrassing on-stage stuff that's happened with gear. There's been so many things I can't even begin to list them. One thing that I like about my current rig is it's almost designed so that I can't do too many embarrassing things with it. You know, it's all in one box. It's a guitar, a cable, an FM9, an XLR to front of house. But one thing that comes to mind is, this was a couple of years ago, back when I was still using an AX8. I had done something, I forget what it was, but I disabled the cabinet modeling globally on the AX8, and I forgot to turn it back on. Like, I was probably just playing at home through a guitar cab, and I wanted to hear some presets that I had made in that kind of situation. And I forgot to turn it on, and we got to this gig and we were doing our own sound, and I was just wrestling the guitar sound all night, kind of thinking, why is this so fizzy and, you know, it's really hard to tame. So I ended up just, you know, progressively applying all this EQ to the guitar. And then I woke up the next morning, we were doing this 3-night residency, and kind of woke up the next morning and thought to myself, it's like, you know what? Did you check that the cab sims were enabled globally? And they weren't. So I had a good old chuckle to myself about that. I'm kind of always telling people what they should do with their modeling devices. And, you know, mistake number one is cab modeling enabled. And yeah, in that case, it got me. I think it must get everybody eventually. But, you know, I kind of managed to wrangle it, but immediately turning the IR on just made a world of difference. It was so much better. I was so much happier. And, you know, there's been several times where I've been in a situation where I couldn't figure out why my guitar just wasn't making any sound, and because I hadn't plugged my cable in. Anybody else feel me? Have you ever had that kind of moment where you just haven't plugged your guitar cable in? Let me know in the comments. Have I ever played Sonic Adventure, and would Ragdoll ever cover that theme music? I'm aware of the theme music, but I grew up as a Nintendo kid, so never had any of the Sega consoles. But I am aware of that game, and I totally agree. I think we could do that. It kind of does sound just like the video game music equivalent of, the sort of songs we write as ragdolls. So maybe I'll have a play around with that one. Maybe there's some good Sonic Adventure licks that I can transcribe and share in one of the 5-minute lick videos. Anybody else play that game out there? This question pops up quite a bit, and I haven't featured these amps on the channel. I really should, but Victory amps, I've tried a few. I really, really like them. I just kind of can't find a bad thing to say about them at all. And I think if you look at the people who use Victory stuff, their kind of prominent artist roster, kind of speaks volumes because there's some monster players on there. One amp that I probably like the most out of the whole Victory lineup is the Kraken. I think that's the Rabia Masad model, where it's like you kind of have a 5150 channel and you kind of have a Marshall style channel on there. A buddy of mine owned one for a while, and we put it side by side with my Soldano, and it held up pretty well for such a kind of compact little amp. It gets pretty greasy and gloriously distorted, which I really like. So I would like to get my hands on some of their stuff and actually demo it and compare it to some of the other amps that I have here that you all know and love. Will I do some more videos on rack mount gear? Yes, definitely 100%. I have my rack permanently set up just out of shot here, and I was actually using it with my new Hydrasynth recently, and it sounded pretty glorious. So yeah, I think I want to do a few more videos focused on particular rack units and what you can do with them. The H3500 is in there, and I definitely want to do some more videos doing some kind of creative routing with that magic machine. This question popped up in various guises, so I'll kind of roll them all into one question on the Future Factory video that I did. Got asked a lot about whether I would recommend that over a DD500, and then similarly whether I would recommend it over a Strymon Dig. I think those three pedals are definitely three of my favorite digital delay pedals that are out there. I would probably say that if you want a lot of functionality and a lot of different modes, the DD500 is the way to go. Like, you can do the circular delay thing on there. You can do multi-tap echoes. You can get, just tape style sounds and vintage digital style sounds out of it really easily by just kind of twisting a knob. And obviously there's the dual functionality on there. The Future Factory, to me, just kind of feels like, if you were just going to have a delay that you use to really fine tune and craft your own custom delay sound, if you're a delay tone chaser, you're probably really going to like that one. And if you don't like menu diving, you're going to love the Future Factory. There's no like hidden features on there. Everything can be accessed from the front panel. And it also does a unique thing with the RF phase modulation. It's just a beautiful sounding delay. And then the Dig is much more of a just kind of grab and go. You have 3 modulation levels, you have 3 different delay types in there. There are some secondary functions which are buried in there, and there is the amazing stereo ping pong feature, which I think is pretty unique, and it's a glorious shade of pink as well. So honestly, I think if you like classic digital delay tones, either of those units will keep you really, really happy. But I think they do fill different kind of ecological niches in the overall delay ecosystem. Does that make sense? Speaking of delays, what reverb would I recommend for a self-professed delay junkie? I think it just depends on what you want to do with reverb. Do you want subtle reverb? I think if you're somebody who's used to using delay to give you ambience, you probably don't want subtle reverb. You probably want something that has a real distinct character that your delays can't do. So what I would do is, in order to answer this question for yourself, is kind of figure out what sort of reverb sounds you like. Do you like plates? Do you like halls? Do you like big shimmer affected reverbs? Do you just kind of like, subtle early reflection style or room style reverbs? And it's fairly easy to find that stuff out because you can, download plugins, or you can download impulse responses of different classic reverbs that you can load into your DAW. So that's a good way to do it. But I would probably say there's a few options I would reach for as like just kind of classic reverb units. If you can stretch for it and afford it, the Strymon Big Sky is just, it's kind of the one. It sounds unbelievably lush and detailed. It's a classic for a reason. If you want more of the kind of big, Blade Runner style reverbs, the Meris, what's it called? Not the Polymoon, that's their delay. I forget the name of it. It's sitting right here. The Mercury 7, that's the one you want to check out from Meris. Similar thing, but it doesn't do pitch reverbs, the Eventide Black Hole, or the GFI Specular Tempest, or the Specular Reverb. I think they're all really good options that give you a couple of different reverb sounds. They do lean towards the more like epic ambient verbs, but they're really great ways to find out if you actually do really, really like reverb. And to round out today's video, I thought this was a really interesting question, and it made me think pretty hard. But in a way, you have these kind of cities or countries that are associated with particular sounds or genres or movements in music, Seattle and grunge, or LA and hair metal, or, the UK and early punk rock. Is there an equivalent for local Australian sounds? And I kind of had to think about this one, and the really obvious one is that pub rock is a massive thing. So if you're looking at the 70s and the 80s with Australia, it was the culture of going out to pubs and seeing live bands that created so many kind of classic Australian bands, whether you look at a band like AC/DC, who, yes, they were Scottish, but they grew up in Australia and they cut their teeth in Australia, and then they went away and became, the biggest band in the world. Or it's kind of more niche Australian bands, whether you're looking at Cold Chisel, or you're looking at NXS, or Icehouse, or Midnight Oil, that whole era, I guess up kind of maybe until like the early 90s. And a big thing that changed in Australia in a lot of places in like the early 90s and the mid 90s were liquor laws and liquor taxes. So that idea of just going out to the pub and getting a bunch of cheap drinks kind of changed, where a lot of people would stay home, they have their pre-drinks, and then they go out. And, you obviously had, generational change and changes in music trends and stuff like that. But yeah, that's the big one that I think I could kind of chalk up, would be like classic Aussie pub rock. There's obviously Australian country music, which if you're not familiar with that and you want to hear people sing country music with an Australian accent, it's kind of interesting. And definitely a newer one would be Aussie hip hop. I think Aussie hip hop is a pretty unique phenomenon. It's, not for everybody. You can ask different Australians what they think of Aussie hip hop, and some people be like, I love it, it's one of my favorite genres of music, and some people just can't stand it. But I kind of feel like a lot of the people I know mostly listen to rock music, and they don't listen to a lot of hip hop or anything like that. But yeah, Aussie hip hop is very, very much its own thing and has grown into its own kind of local sound as well. So probably a bunch of others as well, but they're the two ones which really, really come to mind. 2, 3, I can't even count anymore. And that brings us to an end for another week. Thank you all so much for this week's questions. I hope you like the little kind of tweak in the format. If you have any questions you would like answered next week, again, let me know in the comment section below. I hope you all have a fantastic weekend. Be good to one another, stay safe, and I'll see you all next time.